Alright, so this is pretty much going to be obviously the last video about Avengers that I'm going to make because obviously the game's going down. If you've been playing, you've seen their message that came up, and that was pretty disappointing news to anybody that's been playing the game as long as I have. I've been playing the game for the entire duration. Because originally, as many people know, it was just supposed to be a promotional game for the Avengers movie. And it turned out a lot of people actually really liked the game, and they kept it going for 4 years. So, I mean, for something that wasn't supposed to really go past a couple of months, 4 years is pretty long. That's it was a decent run. A lot of us spent some money and such, but when it comes to Facebook games, honestly, at the time, when you look at what was out there, this was like by far like the best thing out there. There wasn't really Candy Crush or anything like that at the time. I think it was just a bunch of Farmville and Mafia Wars and what was there's a bunch of games that were just kind of like Mafia Wars, where it's just like click and win or click and lose. Like it just builds your stats and see if you win. Yeah, that was like everything. Oh, and I played one that was called Superhero City, and I played that for maybe about a year and a half. Played quote unquote because there's not really much playing that happens in that game. You click, you watch some cardboard cutouts fight each other, and then you see if you won. I mean, you don't even get to control them. You pick your skill. Well, I don't even need to get into that. It wasn't really a game. I mean, they really toted the line of what's a game and what's I guess, an interactive, like an online slot machine with stats that you can build up. I mean, I don't know what it was supposed to be, but when Avengers came out, it was quite different because you went from PvP being let me click this guy and see if I win or lose to you're playing against an AI, of course, but you have characters and teams and strategies, and there's some quite a bit of thought behind it, especially as the game progressed into what it progressed to, which is pretty crazy. Um, but that was a really interesting thing to have at the time because there was really just nothing like it. Now there's quite a few more well developed games, but at the time you really just didn't have any options other than Avengers Alliance if you wanted something interesting. So, as you guys have seen, I've made a lot of content for this game. I've made a tier list video, which I sort of planned on making another, but that's obviously not going to happen. I've made just a tier list in general that's been maintained. I've done quite a bit, like lots of PvP videos. I think I even have the one where I first won Adamantium. I think I was like at the line or something like that. I think I was at like 15 something. And I think I was streaming it. And, it was pretty exciting getting Adamantium the first time. I remember that because, everybody wanted the heroes. And I had gotten the one before that because everyone did. It was Angel. And, because of the bug, as long as you did 50 battles, you just got Angel. So everybody was like, oh, that's cool. But the second time I got it, I actually earned it. And that felt really awesome. Because it was just like, you play the game for so long. And you finally get what you were going for, in PvP. Because I didn't start out PvPing. I started around when the Emma Frost came out. So I missed like the first two or three because I thought I wouldn't be interested, but then it turns out, as you guys see, like I turned out to be interested. Um, Pretty much every season that I started PvPing just because I realized Emma Frost was just so easy to play. All you had to do was mental anguish somebody, and you pretty much won the battle. I mean, it was ridiculous. But the main thing that really got me into PvP was joining the Avengers League after a while. And once I joined the Avengers League, I had a group of people who also played the game who would also discuss strategies and we would learn from each other. We pretty much just built off of each other. Most people were friendly. There were some problem people. And problem people are in every group. So, you deal with it. Because at the time, I was just a regular member. And honestly, I remember being banned 3 separate times from the group, all for like really random and off the wall stuff. Like one time, one of the old admins who's not there anymore, I said something that he just didn't agree with, and he banned me and stuff like that. And I think that was probably most of my bans. And it was like, well, you can have a different opinion. That doesn't mean you got to kick me out of the group. But every time I got kicked out, I would come back. And I had expressed interest in being an admin to the group probably about a year or so in. And within that year, I pretty much, within about the second year of me being there, they actually promoted me to be an admin because after a while, like all the posts that needed to be deleted, I was just tagging them in it anyways. I was just like, hey, are you here? This person's, posting porn. This guy is, he's doing an ad me and he's not in the right spot and stuff like that. And they were just like, you know what? You're doing this so often, you might as well just join up. You're a cool guy. You're reasonable. And I remember I kind of took it by the horns a little bit because I was just like, okay, we're gonna, really set our ground rules here. And I remember I set the rule where we can't talk about Dragon Ball Z, which I guess that rule you can just lift that now as long as you guys just don't freak out, because discussions about Goku, it just the level of fanboyism is just too much to control. But that's pretty much why that rule was in place anyways, is people went nuts over, Goku could beat all of Marvel and DC by himself and stuff like that. Like, get real. No one could do that. You could beat Hawkeye, sure. But you're not going to beat the entire universe of both, especially DC. Come on. So yeah, after that, it's kind of a side story that's not really important, but we ended up kicking out a lot of the problem people. We just weeded them all out, and the group pretty much turned really solid after that, to be honest. I mean, there's none of those people going around trolling and insulting as much as they were before because we had strict rules, and you broke the rules, you just left. So without those people, it turns out pretty good. And I think the coolest thing about the Avengers League, though, is just that I got so many friends from there. Like, there's still a couple of people who I talk to pretty much every day for, like, the past couple of years on there. And, it wasn't even about Avengers all the time either. Like, we would talk about life and work and what we're doing and stuff like that. And it actually turned out to be quite a surprise. I mean, you always will meet somebody like that in an online game that'll just kind of click with you. It's kind of impossible to play a game for, over a year and not meet a bunch of people and, network and socialize and stuff like that. That's one of the coolest things just about online games in general. So that part I really enjoyed. And then there's all the other groups that I've joined, like, I'm not at my computer, obviously I'm in my car, but the all-new Avengers League, the Legendary Avengers, Marvel Avengers Alliance Agents or something like that. There's a bunch of them. And I've been sharing my videos and stuff with all of them and discussing a few things. And, we've got information and learned things from each other. And that was a pretty cool experience. But talking about a cool experience, I didn't really know a lot about Marvel Comics when I was growing up. I'd watched the X-Men TV show, and I watched X-Men Evolution, and I saw a lot of the not-so-good movies. Like, everything before Avengers, like, I saw a couple of the Spider-Man movies, but they were just, I wasn't that excited about them. Hulk, I really didn't like at all. All these things came out, and, I was just kind of vaguely interested because I knew X-Men. And I knew who Spider-Man was, But once this game came out, and they had all these characters and all the, they had their own different story, but they kind of had similarities with the comic book itself. I had learned about so many characters I would have never seen before. And Marvel's loaded, and I don't want to get too I guess, political or whatever, but it was making me mad when I looked and saw, how they were like trying to change the race of certain characters, like in the Fantastic Four movie and stuff like that. And I'm like, you have a series loaded with diverse characters. How about you just grab one of these guys? Like, for Fantastic Four, you could have just threw in Black Panther. He has lots of interactions with the Fantastic Four. Why didn't you just put him in the movie if you want a black character? He's already a black character. He's from Africa. I mean, come on. It seems like a no-brainer. But, there's just so many people, like, I would have never known who, like, Moondragon or Phyla-Vell or everyone excluding Jubilee is, because, come on, she should have made it. I mean, we have Morbius and Blade and Chase Stein, Victor Mancha, Dr. Doom, Ronan, Kazar. I mean, we had so many random people. And bad guys. Like, bad guys that I'd never even heard of are on my team now. Like, I didn't know who Baron Mordo was. Well, if you knew anything about Doctor Strange, I'm sure you did. But, there's just so many people who I just didn't know. And now, like, they're all here in the game. Like, the whole Warriors 3. I didn't know their names when I watched the Thor movie. I didn't know they were important characters. Or, I guess, important characters to the story. No idea who they were. No idea who Beta Ray Bill was. And I learned all these different characters and some general storyline for a whole bunch of them. And that was honestly one of the coolest things about the game. Just learning Marvel. I didn't know Marvel, and now I've I still don't know Marvel that well, but, well, I guess I kind of do. Like, I know way more characters than most people do. If they go and they see a movie and they see somebody they don't recognize, if I see their powers, I can be like, oh, that green chick with the weird antenna, that's Mantis. She's got, like, psychic powers, and she does martial arts and stuff like that. I know who she is now. She's not totally foreign. So that's one of the cooler things about the game, and that's one thing I can take away from the game, no matter if it's still up or not. So, one of the things I wanted to do was I wanted to list some of the most memorable teams in the game, because there's some things that we're just never going to forget. So, I think originally the main thing was, like, when the game came out, like, the 90 CP heroes were, like, OP. So if you had, like, Spider-Man, Captain America, and stuff like that with, like, costumes, and you just blew everybody up. I remember costumes only used to be different looks for the characters, honestly. They didn't actually do anything for a while. And then they were like, well, nobody's going to spend command points on something that doesn't do anything, so let's make it do something. But, if you had, like, Captain America and Spider-Man on your team, you were pretty much invincible. There was a point in time soon after that where the Future Foundation outfits came out. And all those were insane. Like, Spider-Man would have so much evasion you wouldn't be able to touch him without targeting him. But the only person with, like, targeted at the time, I think, was Black Widow. So, like, you had to be Black Widow and hit him. Otherwise, you'd never touch him. It was crazy. There wasn't a lot of removed buffs. There wasn't a scroll of Angelob or whatever it is. There wasn't Soulfire. And I mean, like, there's so much things that weren't in the game. So many things that weren't in the game. It really changed how it worked. And then you go through and you look, and then you got teams like Emma Frost and, Doctor Strange, like I was talking about earlier. But some of the main ones I wanted to talk about is just, Phoenix Cyclops. We're never going to forget how OP that was, where Cyclops would just Mega Optic Blast you, take most of your health. You can't protect. You can't, get most of your turns. What else? You couldn't counterattack. I mean, you were screwed, pretty much. And he could just reapply that, like, every round, and it would just do so much damage. And if, you used Phoenix 5, you hit somebody with the crit, and their team is blown up, and if you try to kill them, you have a guaranteed resurrect from Phoenix, who's probably White Crown, and then when she does her little blow-up thing, she'll just do it again. There wasn't Despair, there wasn't Doom and all that stuff back then. If they resurrected, they were just coming back. And the only Despair item they had was just a 2-round cooldown weapon that you had to get from a gold sale, I think, and it applied despair to one target, and that was, I mean, it was lame, and so I don't think anybody really used that. But that team dominated until they finally nerfed Cyclops pretty hard, and then that kind of went away, and the meta shifted, they added more things to the game, and then it just kind of fell off. But one thing I'm sure that no one's ever going to forget, I'm just going to throw these two together. I'm just going to throw Spitfire and Quicksilver together. Because their whole deal, the going first and just annihilating a person at the beginning, was about the lamest thing I'd ever seen. And it had gotten to the point where people would have to design teams just specifically to beat that. It's like, I just need enough, I need the defense to survive being hit, or I need to copy you. And that was pretty much it. Like, if you just didn't do either, you probably lost. It was really that bad. Especially when it came to Quicksilver Havoc, and Quicksilver would take 2 turns, and then Havoc would be like, oh, look, I got a turn. And then he would just annihilate whoever your tank is, because you just can't take the damage from his hit. And he would do that no matter if you were Tactician or if you were Bruiser, you were definitely gone. If you were Tactician, you were most likely gone. Although I was always gone when I was hit by it, so I mean, I guess you were just always gone. There's just not enough defense in the world to survive that, and it was annoying and kind of hilarious. But mix them with Psylocke and Star-Lord, and you get all those free attacks, and it was nuts. Of course, we're never gonna forget the Worthies. That was a funny storyline when they put it into the game. But the whole thing about when Null and Carruth came out, or when Null came out, I put him with Black Knight and just loaded my Infiltrator agent with AoE magic stuff. And I got to the point where, like, in one turn, if, once Null did his meteors, I would then, you can find these videos. I think I have the videos where I'm up in the 2000s. But you would apply the meteors, and then my agent could literally put on, like, 4 more stacks in one turn, and then get the 5th in the next turn. And then he would heal after every action, because E-ISOs were in the game, and the healing one for magic actions worked on everything. So he would just spam all these meteors on you, and you would disintegrate. And PvP was literally so easy. I got to 2,835. I was considering going for 3,000, because I was just like, I could. It was really that easy. You just couldn't lose. I think I lost maybe one game because Null blew up really fast before he got the meteors down. But remember, this is the point in time where meteors stayed on you forever. Because when Null and Carruth first came out, that's kind of how their debuffs worked. They were forever. Now they're not forever, so it's lame. But Carruth was also OP, because once she threw the Runes of Fear on you, there was nothing you could do. You just lost turns and lost most of your damage. And if you didn't, originally even blowing her up didn't make the runes go away. So you were just kind of crippled for the entirety of the fight. Things like that were obviously corny. And I guess they kind of learned their lesson eventually by making runes, go away when you kill them. Meteors go away when you kill them. But it took a lot. Like, it became to the point, as most of you know, where most people just were like, I need mechanical agents and people immune to fear so that we don't lose all our damage. That was pretty absurd, but I don't want to dwell on that part too long. And just to end it, in this section, anyways, Cloak and Dagger and Phasa were just... when the meta became anti-healing and anti-resurrect, these two were just like, no, we're going to bring that back, and you're not going to be able to stop it. That was a kind of a hilarious idea, I guess. I don't think they really intended on it being as silly as it turned out, but it turned out to be pretty absurd. Because you would sit there and you would just wail on these guys, and then they would just come back with full health and heal and hold you down and then heal and spam skill. It got out of hand, because characters just, as I had made a long post about it before, they had too many things that they could do really well. And it became to a point where it's like, we're no longer being like specialized or just kind of general characters. We're just really good at everything. That's kind of crazy. So the two main things I wanted to talk about, because we're 19 minutes in, I made a lot of posts on groups that were just kind of walls of text, and a lot of people interpreted that as complaining. So one of the things I used to talk about early on was just, I'm only going to go over this really fast. The gold buyers, people who buy, put money into the game, and then they, you lose to their team and whatever, and you get frustrated. Well, I don't know. I don't understand how people don't understand that this is how the games make money. Sure, they might make some advertising money here and there, but you make the most money from people actually just handing you money. That's just kind of how it works. So you have to have that. And I had debated these guys on that for a long time. Early on, they stopped after a while. I guess they realized, okay, well, you kind of have to pay money. But other than that, I used to complain about character balance and how certain things interacted and things like that. And I would propose changes and adjustments and that kind of thing. And a lot of people interpreted that as complaining, but it wasn't really me complaining as much. Because if I was just complaining because I hated the game and I was just a crybaby, I would just quit. I mean, let's get real. Like, why am I going to sit here and type, like, walls and walls of text, like, 500 plus words for a game I don't like? That's stupid. Like, I did all that because I did like the game, actually. And I was, just giving people ideas of how the game could evolve and change. And some of those ideas actually did eventually end up happening. But, when you really like something, you want it to be better when you see it start to slip. And I there were times where I started seeing it slipping. Like, when Quicksilver is like the number one character in the game for a long time, it's just like, okay, we need to do something to fix that so that the game, gets a little bit more interesting. You don't want to go into PvP and just run into Quicksilver Psylocke 900 times in a row, or Cyclops Phoenix 500 times in a row. Because it got to the point where, during the Phoenix Cyclops days, that's all you saw. You did not see anybody else. And that's stupid. And if you did see somebody else, well, you blew them up, because there's no other character combination in the game that was anywhere near as competitive as that. And that's all I really asked for, is just an improvement on what was already there, because I liked it. And I wish people would understand that. And I think most people did understand, for the most part, what I was getting at. But, there was always one or two. Like, we had somebody in my last big rant where they were like, oh, you're a crybaby and stuff like that. Why don't you learn how to play the game and stop complaining? This is why they nerf everything. And I was just like, well, I've been Adamantium for like well over a year now. So it's not like I can't win. I just, I don't want to necessarily win with just the same stuff, or I just want to see something different when I go in, so that, the team variety could fluctuate a little bit. Because there were a couple times in PvP where I feel like there was a pretty open-ended, choices in there. You didn't have to be like the same people every time. And that was kind of refreshing. I liked that. And the last thing I really wanted to talk about, these kind of flowed pretty well for me, just writing them in random order, was my thoughts on Playdom. Okay, so Okay, so like I said in the beginning, there was no games like this really on Facebook. There were games like this in general. There's always been RPGs, but there wasn't a game like this one. And at the time, originally it was pretty unbalanced. I mean, Human Torch, I forgot to mention him. He used to just blow people up in one shot. He used to be godlike. For some reason, he can heal himself, whatever. I don't remember that being in his list of powers, because the wiki doesn't seem to agree. But there was just I guess my major problem, I'm trying to think how to phrase it without trashing them too much, but I guess I'll just be real. they didn't know what they were doing after a certain point. I think they didn't realize how much stuff they put in the game, how much they overloaded it, and then how many characters that they had that they just kind of ignored. Like, when you had the Fantastic Four not get any significant changes other than having E ISOs, I mean, that's kind of silly. You know, the A ISOs they did get were pretty crap. I mean, I think the only one that got an A ISO, oh, yeah, the only one who got one, I believe, was Mr. Fantastic, and it was crap. So, that was just kind of weird. And, like, if you had most of the old characters, and you look at the new characters, like, the difference in how their skills are done and how they're designed is just insane. Like, a lot of the older characters either were designed with a specific team in mind, or were poorly designed, just generally, like, with not enough options. And then the newer characters were generally designed with a specific team in mind, but it would be more well-defined and more thought out. Or they didn't have anything specific in mind, and they were usually just overloaded with stuff. Like Cloak and Dagger. They're just overloaded with stuff. And that was what my last rant was about, was just characters being overloaded. But they weren't the only ones. Like, you look at, you know, most of the newer characters, and they're just loaded with immunities and resistances, and they counter this, and, you know, you can't do this to them and that. And, you know, you look at Sif, and it's like, oh, I'm from Asgard. I just have that passive. Well, that's silly, because, you know, her and Thor both had the same issue. But the rest of the Asgard people didn't have that. What? They all had something else. Like, even the Warriors 3. You know, they had something else going for them. And I feel like they just didn't understand what they were doing after a certain point. Because it would take them a long time to balance things. I forgot about Elektra and Ares Rogue. I just remembered them. But it would take them sometimes really long periods to figure out how to balance things out that were broken, when there were obviously things wrong. Like, you shouldn't have let Iron Fist dominate for as long as he did. He should have just been... You know, you want characters to be good, but not the only option. And my problem was I was feeling like a lot of characters started just becoming the only option. And to take like over a year, maybe 2 years for Quicksilver, I mean, it really felt like forever where Quicksilver was like at the top of the meta. And that's just absurd. I don't understand why. You know, I'm sure they see statistics and they look and they see people in the forums like, hey, it's Quicksilver again. It's Quicksilver with somebody else. And the thing that would really get on my nerves is that on top of that, they would do things. Like, they would add, you know, things to parts of the game. Like, they would add E-ISOs, A-ISOs, or other characters that would just make Quicksilver even more ridiculous. And then they made Spitfire, who was pretty much like a super healing version of Quicksilver. And I was just like, are you kidding me? Like, none of that makes any sense. But I'll talk about the parts that I do like Play Them did, though. I like how they incorporated the movies in a way that, you know, not all the times was it a spoiler for the movie. Because when it came to, like, Iron Man, which one was it? I think it was Iron Man 3. Whichever one, Pepper Potts had the suit on, and she became, well, she didn't really become Rescue in the movie. But, you know, they introduced her, and they kind of vaguely had it movie related, but not really. I think this was probably Iron Man 3, because I think Iron Man 1 came out before the Avengers game came out, so. They had a pretty interesting story. I mean, the whole ISO 8 thing, I think that was, from what I've read somewhere, that's unique to the games for the most part. And, you know, we got to see a different world where apparently S.H.I.E.L.D. agents are insane. I mean, they get, you know, standard issue cosmic cubes and legendary weapons, and they can tank more hits than the Incredible Hulk and stuff like that. I mean, it's kind of absurd, but this is like a universe where some random guy joins S.H.I.E.L.D. and just becomes the strongest thing in the Marvel universe. Like, he's taken down Odin at the very end. Like, at the very end, when you fight Odin as the last epic boss, that was pretty nuts. And, you have a shield agent with Iron Man and, your choice of friends. I took Mr. Fantastic because you can still hit him through the thing with the bifurcator. But I thought that was just kind of a cool experience, and a strange experience at that one. Because, like, they could have just went the route where you just have 3 heroes. They didn't really have to do the agent with the gear part. But they did that. And they, eventually had the agents kind of go out of control. But it was kind of fun and interesting how it worked. To me it was anyways. And how the agent himself or herself became part of the storyline. That was just kind of amazing. And I guess, all the Spec Ops that came out, they were really cool. Because it always gave you something to do. And I wasn't one of those people that, like, played all the time, necessarily. I mean, I played at work, mainly. And, between the other games. Like, it was kind of like a side game for me. But for a side game, it was still engaging enough to be interested in and to care about. So they made a game that was good in that respect. I just wish they got, like, the balance issues worked out a little faster than a year. And I wish they just kind of learned their lesson a little bit faster, like, with what's going to obviously be broken. But, I think this is probably their main, maybe their first game. I don't even know if Playdom made anything else. And they're going to pretty much, from what I understand, be gone after this. Or work on other projects, who knows. But, yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. So, because I've already run on 32 minutes. I don't want to go on too much longer. But that's pretty much what I think about the closing of the game. It sucks. I'm honestly going to miss it. There's not too many online games I've played that have ended that I really miss. Because most of them I just quit because they suck. Like when I played, there's a game called Rapples. I played that and I quit. Superhero City, I quit that. I looked at Mafia Wars and then quit that within a couple of days. It was stupid. But this game, it's actually managed to hold my interest. So despite the fact that I had lots of criticisms here and there, obviously I like the game enough to play it, and it actually means something to a lot of people. Because you can tell, because the petition has about, I think it might have met 25,000 by now. It probably has by the time I made this video, or maybe by the time you see it. But this, it's not going to do anything, I don't think. But clearly there's a lot of people who like the game, met people from all over the world. Had something to keep me busy, especially because I started playing when I didn't have a